Lesbian love. Story. Love grown in the fields. Whispers of the farm. Lesbian love 2025. The first time Maya saw her, she was standing barefoot in the middle of a sunflower field at dawn, her hands covered in soil and her face turned toward the rising sun like she was drinking in the light itself. Maya had just inherited her grandmother's failing farm in rural Nebraska, a place she'd sworn she'd never return to after the town had whispered her out of it 10 years ago when she'd come out at 17. But grief has a way of pulling you back to the places you've run from. And standing there on that dewy morning, watching this stranger move through the golden flowers like she belonged to the earth itself, Maya felt something crack open inside, her chest that she thought had sealed shut forever. The woman's name was Sam, short for Samantha, though she said her mother had called her that before she'd stopped calling it all. She was the daughter of the neighboring farm's foreman, 32 years old with calloused hands and eyes the color of storm clouds, and she'd been working the land since she was old enough to hold a hoe. When she spoke, her voice was low and careful, like someone who'd learned that words could be weapons and had chosen to wield them gently. She'd come over that morning because she'd heard someone had finally moved into the old Henderson place, and in these parts, neighbors still looked after neighbors, even when the rest of the world had taught you not to trust anyone. Maya stood on her grandmother's porch, surrounded by boxes she hadn't unpacked and memories she couldn't escape, and felt Sam's gaze move over her face like a question she wasn't ready to answer. If you believe in kindness and second chances, in the courage it takes to return to the places that once broke you and build something beautiful from the wreckage, please hit that like button, drop a comment below, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to channel name. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you more stories that matter, stories about love that refuses to hide, no matter how hard the world tries to make it disappear. The farm was in worse shape than Maya had imagined. Her grandmother had held on as long as she could, but the last few years had been cruel and the land showed it. Fences sagged under the weight of neglect. The barn roof had holes that let in rain and starlight in equal measure, and the fields that had once grown corn and soybeans now sprouted nothing but weeds and regret. Maya had a business degree and a failed engagement to a man she'd tried to love because it seemed easier than fighting, but she knew nothing about saving a farm. She spent her first week overwhelmed and exhausted, collapsing into bed each night with dirt under her, nails and tears she wouldn't let fall until she was alone in the dark. Sam started showing up every morning just after sunrise. She never asked if Maya needed help. She just appeared with tools and knowledge and a quiet presence that felt like mercy. She taught Maya how to mend fences, how to read the soil, how to coax life from land that seemed determined to stay barren. They worked side by side through the burning heat of late spring, their shoulders brushing as they dug post holes, their hands touching when they passed tools back and forth. Sam spoke about the farm like it was a living thing, something that needed patience and respect and love, and Maya found herself listening not just to the words but to the way Sam's voice softened when she talked about the earth, like she was sharing secrets with an old friend. The town hadn't changed much in 10 years. The same family still ran the same businesses, the same church still stood at the center of everything, and the same judgment still hung in the air like humidity before a storm. Maya saw the looks when she went into town for supplies, heard the whispers that followed her down the aisles of the feed store. She'd hoped that maybe, just maybe, time had softened people's memories, but hate has a long shelf life in small towns, and hers had apparently been preserved perfectly. She kept her head down, bought what she needed, and drove back to the farm with her, hands tight on the steering wheel and her grandmother's voice in her head, reminding her that she'd survived. Worse than gossip, Sam never mentioned the town's hostility directly, but Maya noticed how she positioned herself between Maya and the stairs, how she'd step closer when men at the hardware store let their gazes linger too long, how her jaw would tighten when someone made a comment, just loud enough to be heard but just quiet enough to deny. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch drinking sweet tea after a long day of work, Sam told her about her own story. She'd been married once at 22 to a man everyone said was a good catch. She'd tried for 8 years to be the wife he wanted, the woman the town expected, but she'd been dying inside, suffocating under the weight of a life that didn't fit. When she finally left him, her family had stopped speaking to her. not because of who she loved, but because she'd chosen herself over their expectations, and in their world, that was an unforgivable sin. Maya felt something shift between them in that moment, a recognition that went deeper than words. They were both women who'd been forced to choose between authenticity and acceptance, who'd learned that sometimes loving yourself means losing everyone else. Sam's hand was resting on the weathered wood between them, close enough that Maya could feel its warmth. And without thinking, without questioning, Maya reached over and laced their fingers together. Sam's breath caught, her eyes meeting Maya's with an intensity that made the air feel electric, and neither of them pulled away. They sat like that as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Two women holding hands on a porch in rural Nebraska, where such a simple act felt like revolution. The farm slowly began to wake up under their combined care. Maya learned that healing land takes time, that you can't rush growth, that sometimes you have to let things rest before they can bloom again. She realized she was learning about more than farming, that every lesson Sam taught her about patience and persistence, and faith in the unseen was also a lesson about her own heart. They worked from dawn until dusk, and then they'd sit on the porch and talk about everything and nothing, about dreams they'd abandoned and hopes they were afraid to voice. Sam had a laugh that started quiet and built like thunder, and Maya discovered she'd do just about anything to hear it. The first time they kissed was in the barn during a sudden rainstorm, water drumming on the roof, above them and the smell of hay and earth thick in the air. They'd been organizing tools, and Maya had made a joke about Sam's organizational system being based on chaos theory, and Sam had turned to argue. And suddenly they were close enough that Maya could see the gold flecks in her gray eyes. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, like they were both afraid the other might vanish if they held on too tight. But then Sam's hand came up to cup Maya's face, and Maya's fingers tangled in Sam's hair, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like coming home after a lifetime of being lost. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Sam's forehead rested against Maya's, and she whispered that she'd been wanting to do that since the morning. She'd first seen Maya standing on that porch looking like she was ready to either fight the world or surrender to it. Loving Sam was the easiest thing Maya had ever done, and also the hardest. In the privacy of the farm, they could be themselves, holding hands as they walked the property line, stealing kisses between chores, falling into bed together when the work was done and letting their bodies speak the words they were still learning to say. But beyond the fence line, the world was waiting with its judgments and its cruelty. They kept their relationship quiet, not because they were ashamed, but because they were tired of fighting, tired of justifying their existence to people who would never understand. Sam still lived at her father's house down the road, still maintained the fiction that she was just helping the new farmer get established. And Maya hated the way they had to pretend, hated that loving someone openly felt like asking for trouble. The trouble came anyway, because it always does when people decide your love is their business. Someone had seen them through the barn window one evening, had witnessed a kiss that wasn't meant for outside eyes. And within days the whole town knew Maya's small customer base for the farm stand. She'd started evaporated overnight. People who'd been cautiously friendly turned cold. Someone spray-painted slurs on her mailbox, and another night, someone threw rocks through her truck's windows. Sam's father found out and forbade her from seeing Maya, threatened to fire her from her job at the neighboring farm, told her she was an embarrassment and a disgrace. Sam came to Maya that night with tears streaming down her face and her hands shaking, and she said she couldn't do this anymore, couldn't keep fighting, couldn't keep losing everything for a love that the world seemed determined to destroy. Maya felt her heart break open, felt every fear she'd ever had about not being enough, about love not being enough, come flooding back. But she also felt something else, something stronger. She pulled Sam close and told her that she understood fear, that she'd run from it once before, and it had haunted her for a decade. She said that loving Sam had taught her that some things are worth fighting for, that authenticity isn't just about being yourself, but about refusing to let others dictate your worth. She told Sam about her grandmother, who'd left Maya the farm not just because she was family, but because she'd been the only one brave enough to live honestly. And her grandmother had respected that kind of courage. Maya said she wasn't going to run again, wasn't going to hide, And if Sam wanted to stay, truly stay, they'd face whatever came together. But she needed Sam to choose love over fear. Sam stayed. She moved her things to the farm the next day. And when her father showed up to drag her back, she stood her ground and told him that she was 32 years old and done living for other people's approval. The town's hostility intensified for a while, the kind of pressure meant to crush you back into conformity. But Maya and Sam kept working the farm, kept showing up at the feed store and the grocery store with their heads high, kept existing in a space that wanted them erased, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. An older woman who ran the local bakery started nodding to them in acknowledgement. A young couple with a toddler stopped by the farm stand and bought vegetables, then came back the next week. Not everyone changed their minds. Not everyone opened their hearts. But enough people decided that maybe love in any form wasn't something to fear, and that was enough. The farm thrived under their care, becoming a testament to what grows when you tend to it with dedication and love. They expanded the vegetable garden, brought in chickens, started selling fresh eggs and produce at a farmer's market too. Towns over where people cared more about quality than judgment. Maya discovered she had a gift for growing heirloom tomatoes, and Sam's knowledge of sustainable farming practices turned their little plot into a model of environmental stewardship. They worked hard and they laughed often, and they built a life that was entirely their own, one that didn't apologize or hide or shrink to make others comfortable. If this story has touched your heart, if you've felt the weight of having to hide who you love or the courage it takes to stand in your truth, despite the cost, please show your support. Like this video, leave a comment telling us your thoughts, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that love is worth fighting for, and subscribe to channel name for more stories that celebrate authentic love in all its forms. Your engagement means we can keep telling these stories. Keep showing that love in any form deserves to be honored. 2 years after Maya returned to the farm, they stood together in that same sunflower field where Maya had first seen Sam, and they exchanged vows in front of a small group of people who'd chosen to see them, really see them, for who they were. Sam wore a simple white dress and wildflowers in her hair, and Maya wore linen pants and suspenders and a smile that wouldn't quit. And when they kissed as the sun set over the Nebraska plains, the land they'd healed together seemed to hold its breath in witness. The town might never fully accept them, and there would always be people who looked away or whispered or worse, but they'd learned that acceptance from those who refuse to understand is worth far less than the love they'd built, worth less than the community they'd found with others who knew what it meant to live authentically, worth less than waking up each morning next to the person who saw all of you and chose you anyway. Please take a moment to comment below and tell us, what does authentic love mean to you? Share your thoughts and let's build a community that celebrates love in all its beautiful forms. Their love story wasn't written in grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but in the quiet moments between dawn and dusk, in hands held while walking fence lines, in shared labor and shared dreams, in the patient work of growing something beautiful from soil that everyone else had deemed too damaged to yield anything worthwhile. Maya and Sam proved that love doesn't need permission to exist, that it grows strongest in the places where you tend it with honesty and courage, and that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply refusing to hide. Their farm became a whisper of hope in a landscape that had tried to silence them, a reminder that love, like life itself, finds a way to bloom even in the hardest ground, and that the most beautiful things often grow from seeds planted by those brave, enough to believe in what others cannot yet see. And every morning, as they walked out together to greet the day, the sunflowers turned their faces toward the light, bearing witness to a love that had grown wild and true in the fields where two women had chosen each other, chosen themselves, and chosen to stay.